Okay, so this is what I wanted to say when I mentioned that I check every case for occlusion and how it was aligned. So you have a case, and this case was scanned with a Medit i700, and the problem that arises, especially in cases that have like a big lateral bridge, is that the scanner's aligning algorithm doesn't always align it very well. So here everything actually even seems good. There's a bit of intersections. Yeah, if we go to the articulator, wait, let me just say that this is a crown, for example. Yeah, okay, finished. So if we go to the articulator, come on. Yeah, okay. Now it's gonna work. Yeah. We go to the articulator, you position it. Okay, so this is just quickly positioned. Like this. Okay, good. Yeah, so we get about 150 microns. Seems nothing. I would usually just cut this away. It would get rid of these contacts here automatically, and then since this has the anterior guidance, there's no need for the guidance table. So flat articulator, go through the movements. Okay, and this is it. So this is now calibrated. You can make the models from this, and all would be well. But you would think that if you didn't check the original lateral bite trackers. So we go and load those in. Medit sends them automatically. I have no idea how you get your scan data and if you have those, but these are usually either from trios. There, bite occlusion bite 1, occlusion bite occlusion scan 2. Here occlusion first, occlusion second, doesn't matter. I load them in just as a generic visualization mesh, especially because I load them in at the beginning, so I don't think there's a need to actually go and load it as a bite alignment scan. And this is for the reason that I don't use the Exocad's, it's relative to the scan data, and I want to keep them individual. And the reason is why I don't load them in as a bite scan is because I use this tool here. I don't use the Exocad's bite alignment tool, but I use the align meshes tool. And with this tool, I can now check the distance, how well it was aligned. So let's first go here and let's do this one. So the first point you click is on the floating mesh. This is going to be your bite record, the bite scan. And the second point is just somewhere here. And for this, it doesn't really matter yet. So just click wherever, doesn't matter. And now don't do any of the alignments, just go to show distance. And you're gonna get a color map of how well the mesh is aligned to, how well the meshes are aligned to each other. We do the same thing now on the upper jaw. You can do them with multiple scans. So yeah, on this side, you now have both. And this, I would say, is a pretty good alignment. Has the dark blue here. Here's a legend. These colors don't mean anything without the legend. So you have to read the legend and figure out what they mean. So dark blue is pretty much exact match, and all the way on the other side is red, and pink is beyond red. So pink is more than 100 microns, and red is here, for example, is 100 microns. Green is somewhere in between or a bit below the middle. So this, I would say, is a pretty good match, something you get and you're satisfied with. Here on the other side now, we can do the same thing. We can leave, we don't have to clear the data, we can leave the visualization there. We're gonna click another point here, and then we're gonna click another point on the lower one. And we're gonna do the same thing here on the upper one. Click, and yeah, so now it appears. And here things get a little messier. So on the upper jaw, the cuspid, the upper left cuspid is pretty well aligned, but then you start going into these stumps and you start seeing more and more pink color. So and on the lower jaw, you just get these bands of blue, and these bands of blue are really not satisfactory and are not a good indication. They're an indication of a bad alignment, because basically what they're telling you is, if I hide this now and toggle on the measurement tool, basically your teeth are only matching in a single line where the meshes are intersecting, and then below that line, so here and here, the meshes aren't actually aligned well. They're not on top of each other. Here you don't have a line. Here you have a whole surface, a whole region, area of teeth that is dark blue. Here, this line, this is really, this doesn't tell you it's precise. This tells you that, yeah, the meshes are close to one another, but that's because they intersect. You're always looking for a large area that's in dark blue. So if I hide this now, we can go and we can actually measure it maybe a bit more didactically. It's like 150 microns here on the equators, 200 here, but the important part are up here, the cusps. We start going into 200 microns, 250 microns, 370 microns, and all the way back here, we're now at almost half a millimeter. We're at 400 microns. That's huge. And look at the deviation. It's huge. You can see, yeah, this is a good angle. So you see how much it deviates. Interdental papilla, the cusp tips, and that's only on the lower jaw. The upper jaw, oh, let me make this transparent. Oh, or not. The upper jaw, so I will now select the upper jaw. We have, well, like 130 microns here. The soft tissue, that's not really relevant. That's why we have a problem, most probably. But the hard tissue here, the teeth, so we have another 200 microns of deviation here on the posterior area, and you can see it with the marginal papilla and the cusp, the hard tissue cusp tips. So this is a very poorly aligned scan. Now, how do you fix it? I'm now gonna, first of all, so just so you see the difference at the end, I'm first gonna copy the mesh. I'm gonna keep the position of the upper jaw. So, and I'm gonna align the lower jaw. So I'm just gonna copy this as a generic visualization mesh, load all visible, yeah, relative to coordinate system. So we can see the before and after at the end. Okay, so here it goes. hide the visualization meshes. We turn on the occlusion scans, we go back to the align meshes, and now we start doing the alignment. So on this side, I wouldn't even, I won't even do an alignment with the upper jaw. This one needs fixing, so I select the points here. I'm gonna select a point here. Doesn't matter. You first check the perform alignment. So it's important that you first mark the bite scan and then the jaw scan, because the first one you mark is going to be the one that moves. It tipped here a bit, doesn't really matter, but let's make it a bit easier for the algorithm. So we have a couple of points now, and then now we're going to do the best fit matching algorithm. This algorithm is actually called an iterative closest point algorithm, and it actually works on the basis that it's checking all the vertices in both meshes, and the more vertices in checking the distance between them. So the more vertices it gets really close, that gives it a positive feedback loop, and it moves the mesh around a bit more and checks if it gets a higher number of even lower deviating vertices, and it does this a bunch of times until it gets the most optimal result. So this now you see is much better than what it was before. We have a large dark blue area on the stump. We have a pretty good blue greenish area on the on the upper cuspid, and we have some matching parts here on this premolar. Why there's pink here? It could be due to the lack of scan data. No, but it is just deviating. Okay, so, but this is much better than it was. Now that we have both of these, this was already aligned, this one was already aligned, but we fixed this one. If this one wouldn't be aligned, I would do the same procedure as I did on the left side. Now that we have both of these aligned, now we clear the data. So it's like we start the tool again. And now we select the moving mesh to be the lower jaw. So we first click on the lower jaw, and then we click on the bite scan on this side. So I'm gonna put 2 points here, and then we do the same thing on the other side, because we want the alignment to take into consideration both scans, the left and right one. We perform the alignment like this, and this just roughly aligns it, but pretty much it already was in the roughly aligned place. And now we go to best fit matching. And now it tipped, as you saw, it tipped quite a bit. If I go undo, yeah, it tipped quite a bit up here. Best fit matching. You see? And it aligned much better. Before, if I show the distance, you see this was a nice color, but this is terrible. This is intersects here, and doesn't match anywhere else. We go best fit matching. This is still good, but this is now like it should be. And so that's how I align my scans, and that's why I always check it, especially in cases like these ones. And now I'm gonna show you the before. So this was the before, and this is the after. The deviation here gets amplified because we had deviations both in the upper and the lower jaw. So before we measured here, I think we measured here like 300, and up here 200. Now we're gonna measure the sum of these both, because we aligned first the upper and then the lower, and the lower compensated for both. So nearest, let's go this and these. Okay, yeah, so it's here it's around 400. On the back it's 380. Also here on the working cusps it's 350 microns. Those are huge values, and those are values that are unacceptable for your work. So yeah, especially on the back, because the back gets amplified by the 3-to-1 articulator rule much more. So if you have like 300 microns of a higher bite here, you're gonna have an open bite at the incisors, let's say half a millimeter, and on the incisal pin, if that would be in the articulator, it would be like 1.5 millimeters. So because it gets amplified the more forward you go. So yeah, this is what I've started doing maybe half a year ago, and I've seen a lot of cases that weren't so well aligned, even though I think Medit is great at developing its software, and I use its laboratory scanner, and the algorithm they use is, I mean, it's pretty reliable, it's not bad, but still I would advise you to check every case, because you're never sure, and it's much easier to do a 2-minute check than to have negative energy when you give out a work that isn't fitting well occlusally. And another thing for the end that I could mention is sometimes you get this almost has it, but it doesn't. Sometimes you get meshes that, due to the high tuberosity here, you may intersect at the back. The gum of the upper or the lower, doesn't matter, may intersect a tooth or the gum in the opposing arch. So what I first do, I didn't do it here because I know this case, and I know you didn't have this, but always first, whenever I load, I first edit the mesh. And I first correct all of this. I take out all of it. I trim it nicely. I keep the teeth, of course. But the gum back here, especially if it intersects, I trim it. I trim it like this. I go around and around, but for the sake of keeping this short and informative, I won't bore you with that. But anyways, now it's nice and open, and we know there's no intersections here. These intersections first can cause your first they can report a much bigger number of intersection. It can report like 1.5 millimeters, even though the teeth itself aren't intersecting that much. So that's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens, it can influence your movements, it can influence your protrusion, because the scanner doesn't know what's hard and what's soft tissue. So when it does its movements, if it gets into a contact here before it goes to an edge-to-edge position with the incisors, it can reproduce incorrect movements. So you gotta watch out for that. And as I said, it can cause the algorithm not only to report the higher intersections, but usually it also fails. So that's one very common mistake, very common mistake, and very common reason why the algorithm of automatically removing the intersecting meshes fails. If it fails, even though you don't have the gum parts intersecting, sometimes, I have no idea why, sometimes it also fails because of the weird anomalies in the mesh. But if it fails due to this, I go to freeform scan data. I turn both meshes to full opacity like it's here. I turn to the side of one, and now you see these parts are actually from the lower teeth intersecting, punching through. So the parts that I'm having trouble with, then you can turn on the show distances and include the healthy teeth here, or you can just see where it punches through, the lighter color, and just remove it manually. You don't even have to fully remove it. you have to mostly remove it, and then when you go again to the articulator, the algorithm will now work and it will produce a nice outcome. So yeah, this is all I wanted to share with you, and I hope you find this useful. Have a good day.